In 1943, in the stony countryside of Småland, 17-year-old Ingvar Kamprad registered a tiny mail-order business called Ikea. Ikea is no ordinary company, and this is no ordinary story, because the brand that promised affordable design was built by relentless cost-cutting, supplier warfare, and a founder shadowed by a deeply uncomfortable past. In 1943, in the rural parish of Agunnaryd, 17-year-old Ingvar Kamprad registered a business and named it Ikea. The name fused his initials with Elmteryd, the family farm, and Agunnaryd, the village that shaped his instincts. Småland was beautiful, but it was not generous. The soil was thin, the winters were hard, and waste felt almost sinful. That mattered, because Kamprad's first talent was not design. It was squeezing profit from almost nothing. As a boy, he sold matches, then pens, wallets, picture frames, watches, and nylon stockings through mail order. He learned a brutal lesson early. If price dropped low enough, customers would forgive almost everything except disappointment. So what could a teenager in the Swedish countryside actually build from that lesson? He built a system for reaching ordinary households who wanted useful goods without the polished prices of city stores. In post-war Sweden, that gap was real, and Kamprad saw it before larger retailers bothered to look. He wrote ads, packed parcels, and tracked pennies with the concentration of a farmer counting seed. There was always a smell of paper, ink, and cold timber around the operation. Nothing glamorous, everything practical. Ikea did not begin as a furniture company, it began as a discipline. And that discipline was about to collide with the one category that could make him rich, or ruin him. By 1948, Kamprad added furniture to the assortment, and the stakes changed immediately. A wallet could be dropped in an envelope. A table could bankrupt a young company with one bad decision. Furniture was bulky, expensive, and deeply emotional, because people lived with it every day. That was exactly why Kamprad wanted it. He believed ordinary families deserved modern furnishings at prices they could actually reach. In 1951, Ikea published its first furniture catalog and turned the page into a weapon. Photographs let customers imagine a different life before they ever touched the product. But low prices created a new problem. People assumed cheap meant shabby. So how do you convince a customer to trust a chair they have never sat in? In 1953, Ikea opened a showroom in Älmhult, giving skeptical buyers a place to look, touch, and compare. That move solved one problem and created another, because Sweden's established furniture sellers were now paying attention. They did not see Kamprad as a charming outsider. They saw a price cutter teaching customers to expect less from everyone else. By the mid-1950s, Ikea had demand, but growth brought a physical problem no slogan could solve. Furniture broke in transit, took up space, and cost too much to move. If Kamprad could not shrink those costs, low prices would stay a promise instead of a model. Then came the moment Ikea would later mythologize. In 1956, designer Gillis Lundgren struggled to fit a table into a car. He removed the legs, laid the pieces flat, and suddenly a logistics headache looked like a business system. That simple act helped define flat-pack furniture, products designed to be packed in pieces and assembled at home. Why did that matter so much? Because shipping air is expensive, warehouse space is expensive, and skilled assembly is expensive. Flat-pack attacked all three at once. It also shifted labor from the factory floor to the customer, who now became the final assembler. Ikea was not just selling furniture anymore, it was redesigning who did the last piece of work. And once customers accepted that trade, the company had found an engine its rivals could not easily copy. By the late 1950s, Ikea's prices were drawing customers, and that made enemies in Sweden's furniture industry. The threat was simple. If rivals could not match Kamprad's prices, they could choke off his supply. Suppliers were pressured not to sell to Ikea. For a retailer built on low cost, that was existential. No chairs, no tables, no empire. So Kamprad looked beyond Sweden. In 1961, Ikea began working with factories in Poland, a move that changed the company's economics. Poland offered lower production costs, and Ikea offered something factories wanted just as badly: steady volume. But cheap manufacturing alone was not enough, because low price without reliable quality becomes trash. Ikea answered with unusually close cooperation on design, production, and packaging. Measurements tightened, materials were scrutinized, and every saved centimeter inside a carton mattered. You can almost hear the factory floor here: saw blades, forklifts, paper plans slapped onto wooden benches. By escaping the Swedish supplier squeeze, Ikea had protected its future, but it was also becoming far larger than its founders' village logic. By the 1960s and 1970s, Ikea was no longer just a seller of cheap furniture. It was building a total environment. In 1958, the company opened its first full store in Älmhult, and the format kept evolving from there. Customers were no longer browsing isolated objects. They were walking through staged rooms and buying a way of living. That mattered because furniture is hard to picture in an empty warehouse, but easy to desire in a convincing scene. Ikea turned aspiration into a route map. You entered, followed the path, imagined a better apartment, collected flat boxes, and did the final work at home. The company wrapped this model in language that sounded almost civic: good design for the many people. That phrase carried real force. It said style should not belong only to the wealthy, and millions of customers believed it. In 1976, Kamprad wrote A Testament of a Furniture Dealer, a manifesto of simplicity, thrift, and anti-bureaucratic discipline. Inside Ikea, frugality was not a side habit. It was a moral code. But every moral code becomes more complicated when the organization enforcing it spans borders, money, and power. By 1982, Ikea faced a problem many founder-led companies eventually face. Success attracts heirs, tax authorities, and would-be meddlers. Kamprad wanted the company to outlive him without being easily sold apart. His answer was a structure so unusual that even careful observers sometimes needed a diagram. That year, Stichting Inca Foundation was established in the Netherlands. The retail business sat under the Inca side. The IKEA concept, including the brand and franchise system, sat with Inter-IKEA in a separate structure. Why split a company this way? Because control, taxation, succession, and independence all become strategic questions once a family business turns global. The result was not elegant transparency, it was durability. The structure made IKEA hard to take over, hard to fragment, and hard for outsiders to fully map in a single glance. Kamprad presented this as protection for the mission, not a decorative financial trick. Still, when a company claims moral simplicity while using intricate corporate architecture, people start asking harder questions. In 1994, as IKEA had become a global symbol of Scandinavian modernity, one part of Ingvar Kamprad's past returned with force. The stakes here were not commercial, they were moral. Reports renewed scrutiny of Kamprad's involvement with Sweden's far-right New Swedish movement in his youth. The movement was led by Per Engdahl, a fascist whose ideas survived the fall of Nazi Germany. Kamprad had not merely brushed near that world. As a young man, he had joined it, and he maintained contact with Engdahl after the war. That fact sits badly beside any story about openness, equality, and democratic design. How should a company built on one man's vision reckon with what that man once believed? Kamprad responded in a letter to employees, calling it, in his words, the greatest mistake of my life. For some people, that apology mattered. For others, the stain never left. The empire kept growing, but the founder's biography could no longer be told as a tidy parable of thrift and genius. By the time Ingvar Kamprad died in 2018, IKEA had already outgrown any one biography. That does not mean the biography stopped mattering. The company changed how millions of people furnish homes, how retailers stage aspiration, and how supply chains chase cost through design. It also normalized a bargain that now feels obvious: lower prices in exchange for customer labor. You carry the box, you follow the diagram, you tighten the final screw on your own living room floor. That trade helped make modern design feel reachable. It also helped create one of the most efficient retail machines on Earth. And efficiency, in Kamprad's world, was never just operational, it was philosophical. Keep it simple, keep it cheap, keep it moving. Today, IKEA operates 473 stores worldwide, a scale that would have been unimaginable in that Småland farmhouse. The lesson is not that great companies are pure, or that flawed founders erase what they built. It is that both truths can sit in the same box, waiting to be opened. IKEA's story endures because it is bigger than furniture. Both truths can sit in the same box, waiting to be opened. IKEA's story endures because it is bigger than furniture. It is a story about how design was democratized, how cost became a creed, and how a founder's ambition can leave both a masterpiece and a moral knot. 473 stores later, the flat pack empire still asks the same uneasy question. What, exactly, are we willing to assemble for a lower